I see my man in the background, Reason to Resist, Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri Lascaris is a lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. In 2020, Dimitri ran for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada, and he is host of Reason to Resist. Dimitri, my man, how you doing? You doing okay this morning?
I'm well, and I want to wish a most happy birthday to McCoy Thomas. I think it's wonderful that you on air have taken the time to honor your uncle. I commend you for that.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, he's my uncle. I love him. His family. Don't often get to see him, but he's definitely in my thoughts, and I care about all of them. How you doing today? You doing okay this morning?
Just woke up. So
Did you?
I don't normally get up this early. I'm a late sleeper, especially now.
You lucky bastard.
You'll make me more productive today because I got out of bed early. So
when I am in the States, I am up at like 4:30, and the show has to be done at 7, so it like starts at 7. So it's like this blurry-eyed reading the news. All right, what's new? What happened overnight? Et cetera, et cetera. Here it's different, but it's worse, weirdly enough. Because for me, it starts at 7 p.m. And so it ends at 10. And then I have to cut videos, process videos, and everything else. I finish at like 4 a.m. It's a mess. It becomes a mess.
Wow.
But I'm glad you could join me, man. There is a lot of news to hit. And the one that I want to hit has to do with Donald Trump's ultimatum. So Donald Trump has... Who the hell? So Donald Trump has given an ultimatum to Russia. And effectively, he has seen Russia, pound the devil out of Ukraine. Ukraine is getting weaker, obviously so. They're losing men, they're losing materials. There's a 2,000-kilometer front that they're being pushed back on. Russia is liberating territory day after day after day. Ukraine seems to be incapable of stopping them. And they have been even sending like 500 drones a day, 700 at times, with Kim Zog missiles and everything else. They have been destroying everything in their path. So Trump says, okay, I don't like that. That makes me look bad. That's humiliating. And so I am giving Russia 50 days. And in 50 days, I'm going to send weapons. And in 50 days, I'm going to pass secondary sanctions, 100%. Now, Russia's response to this has been, I'll just show you Medvedev before I get into it. Medvedev's response was, Trump issued a declarative ultimatum to the Kremlin. The world shuddered, awaiting consequences. The militant European Union is disappointed. Russia didn't notice. That is their response. We don't care. We don't care. Give me your take on this before I step into this, because Trump had the opportunity to walk on this war, and he didn't walk. It's now his war.
Yeah. You notice how he says every time he opens his mouth, he's asked about Ukraine. This is Joe Biden's war.
Yeah.
First of all, I can't help but feel that somebody told him, some trusted advisor, that every time you're asked about the Ukraine war, speak that sentence and just keep saying it until you lose. So that people will forget the fact that you are continuing the war, which is in exact opposition to what he told everybody. He basically lied, Jamaro. He just straight up lied. He did something politicians do all the time. Barack Obama did it, and that is flat out misrepresent what your intentions are when you're running. And then reveal your true colors as soon as you get into the White House. That's exactly what Barack Obama did. He literally, I went out and supported that. I'll never forget this. It was a lesson in political naivety for me. Even though I'm not an American citizen, I can't vote. I went down to Indiana for 10 days and volunteered for Obama's campaign when he was running against Hillary in the Indiana primary. And then after he got the nomination, I went back to Pittsburgh and I did it again. And I sat in a union hall. Such an idiot I am. And I actually, with friends of mine who had come from Canada that weekend, when he won on election night, I cried. I actually started crying.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was so inspired. I was so angry about the financial crisis and the ripoff and the bankers and so forth that I was inspired by this man. And by the time he got into the White House in January, between November and January, he had revealed his true colors. He just flat out lied. And between that time, he allowed Israel to launch another murderous attack on Gaza. He supported the bailout of the banks. He said that he wasn't going to prosecute CIA torturers, and it was clear as day within 2 or 3 months that he was a complete and utter fraud. Well, this is what Donald Trump is. He's a complete and utter fraud, And he's proven that now in many ways, not just with respect to the Ukraine war, but also with respect, for example, to the Epstein files.
Yep.
But what's really interesting about this is now, I think, many of us, I'm sure you're one of these people, have started to suspect that he was lying a long time ago,
Yes.
well before this announcement. But what's interesting about this announcement is what does it actually all mean? Okay, we know you're lying, Donald, and you actually have every intention of sustaining this war. But why did he give them a 50-day deadline? Interestingly, it's not out of the question. I'm not predicting this is going to happen, but the Ukraine's forces could collapse within 50 days. Within 50 days, the Russians may succeed in pretty much getting all of the 4 oblasts that they have annexed, with the support, by the way, of referenda that were held there, a couple of years ago in these oblasts. Within 50 days, one thing's for sure, however much Russia may advance, Ukraine is going to suffer a lot more damage, especially with those punishing strikes, drone and airstrikes that you just mentioned. Why did he give him 50 days?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because Donald Trump is going to answer the question for you. I have a clip of Trump being asked that very specific question, like, hey, 50 days is like 2 months. That's kind of a long time for you to give them to make a choice. And again, because Russia doesn't care, but let's hear what Trump has to say about it.
Dummy, that's why. And I don't think 50 days is very long, and it could be sooner than that. I don't think 50 days is very long. You should have asked that same question to Biden. Why did he get us into this war? You should ask that question. Yeah, and what did he tell you? Why did he get us into this war? You know why he got us in? Because he's a dummy. That's why. And you don't cover it right. But you should be asking that question to Biden. Why did he get us into this war? Because he's incompetent.
He said that three times just in that one excerpt. He said it's Biden's war. Essentially, that's what he said. Like three damn times. I mean, who was the first one who sent lethal weapons to Ukraine in his first presidency, man? He was doing, provocative military exercises, the military forces of the United States in Ukraine. He was supporting Ukraine's entry into NATO. This isn't his war. My ass, it's not your war. It was his war before the second term began. Now it's more his war than it's ever been. Sorry to interrupt. This is so ridiculous.
But you're absolutely right. It's almost as if he's being questioned effectively, like, okay, now you're sending weapons. I mean, he was always sending weapons, so it's not like the weapons stopped. And then he immediately pivots to, this is not my war. Dude, you're sending weapons. Like, you're literally at a press conference telling people, I'm now going to sell weapons to the Europeans. The Europeans are going to take those weapons and give to Ukraine. Are you not entertained? And he's like, okay, well, that's not what you got elected on. And you know what it is? It's not that I think Trump was completely lying about wanting to end the war. I just think he wanted to end it on America's terms. And he gets in office, and he is completely incapable to understand that Russia's not going to do that. Like, meaning this is not a real estate deal where your personality is enough to get you over the finish line. Russians have been lied to over and over again. Minsk agreements 1 and 2, Istanbul agreements, or the Istanbul communique. All of these things were lies. And the US played a massive role in making sure that all of those things failed miserably. So Trump coming in after all of this history has taken place, the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, all of this stuff happened. All of this stuff was built with the US involved. And Trump is acting as if there is no spoon. And we're going to pretend like, we're starting from day one. Okay, for one, you're a flagrant liar, and everybody knows it. And B, this is not about your personality. This is about nations. He doesn't seem to get it. I mean, is that your take on it? Like, how do you view that? Because I do think he started off with, hey, let's make a deal. It's just they don't want his deal.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, is he really going to there's almost no trade between Russia and the United States, right? So if his intention, I don't think this is his intention, because he kept saying secondary sanctions when he announced this, which, for the benefit of those who are listening to us and aren't familiar with that term, means that the United States government plans to sanction anybody who's buying Russian products, and particularly oil, at a rate of 100%. This would be devastating. It would be complete and utter havoc, because the Chinese and the Indians, amongst others, Turkey, I believe, also buys large quantities.
Qatar,
And even
UAE. Yeah.
even European countries apparently are still buying significant quantities of Russian oil, despite all their blather. So, is he really going to wreak havoc with trade relations around the world, and particularly countries as important to the international trade as Russia and India? I'm sorry, China and India. I'm skeptical about that. But what's very interesting, Jamal, is that there was a decision a few weeks ago. We were told that they weren't going to send any more weapons or particular types of weapons, particularly Patriot air defense missiles, which apparently are in short supply. And there's been a big question about who made that decision and why is Donald Trump now going back on it. I read an article yesterday in Politico, which suggested the person who's behind that decision is a guy named Elbridge Colby, who is the chief of policy, I think, for the Pentagon. He's an undersecretary of state. He and a guy by the name of A. Wes Mitchell, who's currently with a think tank and was, I believe, an undersecretary of state in the first Trump administration, have been writing for years, not about the need to end the Ukraine war. What they've been writing about is the need to put the burden of sustaining the Ukraine war on the Europeans so that the U.S. military can change its focus to West Asia and ultimately to China. So what Colby did, or is reported to have done, it would be consistent with that. He's saying, we're not going to continue to supply these weapons in short supply to Ukraine, but the Europeans can do that. And meantime, we're going to focus our efforts, as obviously the U.S. military has been doing over the past few months, with its war in Yemen and then attacking Iran and supporting Israel throughout its war of aggression on Iran. So Colby was acting consistently with the plan, which was not to end the Ukraine war, but turn the burden over to the Europeans. And now Trump is not even content with that plan. He's not apparently prepared to allow the Europeans to assume all of the burden. The United States is going to continue, even though financially they're going to pay for this next round of weaponry, apparently, and who knows whether that will ultimately happen. The weaponry is coming from the United States, and it's diminishing U.S. weapon stocks. I think basically what seems to have happened is that Trump, he's so determined to sustain the war that he basically overruled his own, the brains of his foreign policy, which has been counseling him for years to pivot to West Asia and to China. That's how determined he is to actually sustain this war. He's not even taking the advice of the masterminds of his foreign policy.
I don't even know if Trump knows what's going on, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. I don't get do you really get the sense that him being asked the question, it's almost, I agree with you. I think somebody told him, hey, if anybody brings up the war, said this is Joe Biden's war. And because he didn't have an answer for the question, he immediately flips out and starts screaming, it's Joe Biden's war, why didn't you ask Joe Biden? Because he didn't have an answer for that question. I mean, I can show you the video where they asked him, they said, Trump, do you know who made the choice to stop the weapons? And he says, I don't know. And they said, well, so, and the reporter's like, really? You don't know? He says, well, if a decision is made, I'll know. It's like, but wait a minute, you just say you didn't know who stopped the weapons. I am not certain that he is in full faculties, meaning I don't know if he's in fully charge of his government, where he knows what's going on a day-to-day basis. I could be wrong.
I think you could be completely correct. I mean, I don't know either. I find it a little difficult to believe he doesn't know who made that decision, especially the second time he denied it. He was asked again after I think a couple of days had gone by, and he said, I haven't really thought about it. I don't know. That I'm not buying that. But is it possible?
Well, why would he lie about that? That's a lie that doesn't make you look good. As president of the United States, to say, well, I don't know who stopped the weapons. That doesn't look good.
Well, because it looks like he's contradicting himself if he says, I know who said it, and the decision was announced, and then I changed my mind. So he doesn't want to. Maybe he doesn't want to be seen to be vacillating on how to deal with the Ukraine war. He wants to seem decisive and so forth, and he changed his mind after he got advice from somebody that he spoke to directly. That's a possible scenario. I don't know, Jamal, but is your suggestion plausible that he doesn't know? Yeah, sure, of course it is. We're talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an idiot. He's an absolute moron. He's a carnival barker. He's an ignoramus. It's not just stupid, in my opinion. I didn't think this before, but after watching this circus for the last 6 months, man, I've come to the conclusion he's just flat out stupid. Maybe it's cognitive decline, I don't know. But he's also astonishingly ignorant. That is very clear. The stuff he should know, he has no idea. So, you know, at the end of the day, all we can be sure about is that the circus continues. And I think it's getting worse in the White House.
What do you think the Russian response is going to be to this? I mean, and because just to add something to that, Financial Times is reporting, and I'm going to be fair to Trump, I'm sure both, but Financial Times is effectively saying right here that Donald Trump asked, "Hey, Zelensky, can you hit Moscow with your, you know, do you have anything that can hit Moscow?" Now, Donald Trump privately encouraged Ukraine to step up deep strikes in the Russian territory, even asking Zelensky whether he could strike Moscow if the U.S. provided long-range weapons, according to People Brief on the discussion. They even brought up St. Petersburg. He's like, hey, it's St. Petersburg too. Now, when Donald Trump was asked about this, because I have my own theory about this, when Donald Trump was asked about this, listen to what he says.
Target Moscow. Should Zelensky target Moscow, sir? Should Zelensky target Moscow or deeper into Russia?
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
Is it Moscow?
So Financial Times is reporting one thing. Donald Trump, when asked openly, is saying no. Give me your thoughts on this before I say anything about this.
You know, again, it's so hard to know exactly what's going on here, but my best guess is that the Financial Times or its sources are lying. It's just a guess, but I think they're lying.
I so disagree with you, by the way. I so disagree with you. But go ahead, make your case. Make your case.
Oh, but it's totally possible that he did. Don't get me wrong. I can believe it. But I don't trust the Financial Times at all. Maybe even less than Donald Trump. And I can easily imagine that people behind the scenes are working with the Financial Times to destroy any possibility of a rapprochement between Trump and Putin. That would do it, right? If Putin were persuaded that Trump was privately urging, Zelensky to strike Moscow, he would say this man is every bit as belligerent and as dangerous to us as the Biden administration, possibly even more so. And that would be the end of it. That would be the end of it. As things stand, it may be over any possibility of a real détente between, the Trump administration and Putin's government. But that certainly would put a nail in the coffin of rapprochement. So it could be that. But at the same time, sure, is Donald Trump capable of, lying flagrantly and saying one thing to Zelensky in private and then just staring the journalist in the face and saying, no, he shouldn't strike Moscow? It's entirely possible too. Who really knows at the end of the day? I mean, how can we be sure? And what gives you confidence that the Financial Times story is true?
Let me ask it in questions. Let me ask it in formal questions. Would Donald Trump consider that to be strength or weakness to do that? Because he would consider it strength.
Oh, for sure. For sure, he'd consider it a strength.
When Operation Spiderweb took place and those drones hit the airplanes, and then they also went on terrorist activities where they were blowing up trains and everything else, do you think Trump knew?
100%. 100%. I cannot believe for 1 second he didn't know that.
So why would Trump do that? Because keep in mind, under this model, Trump wants a deal. He wants to negotiate. And yet he's knowingly allowing the nuclear triad to be hit. He's allowing terrorist activities to take place. And let's be very clear, the CIA was obviously involved in these terrorist activities. The CIA, MI6, et cetera, they're all throughout Ukraine like roaches doing this stuff. And there was even policy papers that were talking about using terrorist activities, this kind of dirty war that took place in Russia because they're losing the war on the regular fronts. So if they're engaged in a dirty war in Russia where they're killing people, bombing civilian targets, bombing the nuclear triad, and Donald Trump is in on it, what would make this any different?
Well, those are very good questions, Jamal. And ultimately, they do suggest that Donald Trump, they certainly make it more plausible that Donald Trump actually told Zelensky to do this. But who knows what goes on in that harebrained skull of his? I suspect that he would regard striking Moscow as the ultimate provocation. He would view probably those nuclear bombers as a legitimate military target, which they are, by the way.
Yeah.
As provocative as it was, this is military equipment. And these air bases are military. So striking Moscow, is something that I think it's the ultimate red line for Moscow, particularly for I think the Russian government, particularly if they start killing large numbers of civilians in Moscow.
Right.
That would, I think, all hell would break loose if they did that. So my guess is that Trump probably understands that that's the most severe provocation, short of nuclear weapons, that he could be a party to from the Russian perspective. But I could be wrong.
Would somebody like Trump think that we need, because Donald Trump as an American president wants a deal on U.S. terms. Trump knows that as it stands, Russia is winning. And if things keep going this way, they would continue to win. And so even though Russia's like, hey, we can meet us at the diplomatic table. At the diplomatic table, what Russia's asking for is unconditional surrender. I don't care what we call it. We can call it fried liver. It is an unconditional surrender, what they're asking for at the diplomatic table. And so if you are Donald Trump and you are trying to get Russia to accept something less than what they want, because what they want is effectively a surrender, how do you get it? Now, you could walk and let Ukraine collapse, but he doesn't want to do that. He's taken on the mantle of the war currently. Okay, so you can't get what you want under the current model. Maybe in Trump's mind, you can get it if you can ramp up pressure against Moscow in, kind of the shadow war by having Zelensky with plausible deniability coming from the White House, firing at Moscow, firing at St. Petersburg, where the U.S. is like, well, we told them not to do that. We didn't give them permission to do that. We can't believe that they did that. We think that's wrong. And so if you ask Trump openly, Trump will say, no, of course not. Wink and a nod. I strongly suspect the Financial Times got it right. Now, what gives me confidence is only because I think Trump is stuck where he currently is with the knowledge that Moscow is going to win, or they are winning as things are going. He has no capacity to bring Putin to the negotiating table to accept anything that he's willing to accept as American president. And he's stupid enough to think that attacks on Moscow, if they're plausible denied, might bring Russia to the table. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
But you could be right. And I'll tell you something, Jamal. If he in fact told Zelensky this on the theory that this is going to bring Russia to its knees, it just confirms how incompetent he is. Every single major provocation has been met by an escalation. I mean, the intense strikes we're seeing now, are coming after the latest provocation, which was the attack on the nuclear bombers. Even though they were legitimate military targets, that was obviously highly provocative. And by the way, there were also at the same time what amounted to terrorist activities in the Bryansk region, right, when they derailed those trains. So I think the fairest interpretation of what's currently happening on the ground is that Russia has escalated considerably because of their impatience with these provocations. So if you look at the history of the conflict, and you're analyzing Russia's behavior in a rational way, you would not think that striking Moscow is going to bring them to their knees. But is Donald Trump stupid enough to come to that conclusion, notwithstanding the consistent reaction of Moscow to provocation? Sure, he's stupid enough. I just hope they don't do it. Because, all hell's going to break loose if they do start killing large numbers of civilians in Moscow. That will.
I agree with you. I guess my thing is, from Trump's point of view, where do you go from here? Like Politico came out with a piece, and in the piece they point out that Donald Trump acknowledges that the Russians are going to win it. They get it. They know it. As a flat fact, the president views that Russia is going to win. They said it flat out. And so then it becomes, okay, but you're still sending weapons. So what do you do if your name is Donald Trump and you say, I'm going to get a deal, and it is clear as day that there is nothing that is taking place militarily that is going to get you that deal because the Russians don't care about your point of view? Putin would be very nice to you. He would talk very kind to you. He will offer you a business deal. He'll do all that stuff. But from the standpoint of budging on the main concerns of these 5 regions are ours, and I'm including Crimea in that, these are ours, this is Russian territory. Ukraine is going to have to acknowledge these territories. You have to stop giving them weapons, no NATO. I'm treating the Russian speakers correctly. Hell, we may even be willing to freeze on these current lines, but those things have to be acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And you're the president saying, I'm going to look bad if I do that. That's going to be humiliating if I do that. I can't do that. So what do you do in that situation? That's what I'm stuck with. That's what I'm saying. I think he's running a shadow war under the actual war. Because from his point of view, I need to get a deal and I can't get a deal under the model to which I'm finding myself currently. I'm stuck. I don't know how you get out of this stuckness, if that's a word. That's what I'm stuck with.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Well, he might, he might be saying these things simply because he doesn't want people to credibly make the accusation that Ukraine lost because of a lack of support from the United States. Even if he knows, that the war is lost and there's no hope, nothing will happen. That might be why he's doing this, and that might well be why he gave 50 days, because he's hoping that Ukraine will be brought to its knees between now and then. But he'll be able to say, "Hey, man, I threatened them with sanctions, 100% sanctions and secondary sanctions, and I tried, and I agreed to send them more weapons. It's not my fault. It's Joe Biden's war."